Yo, 2013 Chevy Suburban, four-wheel drive, 1500, 5.3 liter. Doing ball joints today. We got play in this lower ball joint. Upper ball joints are good. If you're changing your upper ball joints, it's a lot easier. Control arms, boom, zip them out, zip them in. Make sure you keep your alignment marks the same. So upper control arms pretty easy. Take the nut off, take that nut off. Take your wiring and brake hose off and just replace it. Lower ball joint, a little more complicated. Here's all the tools you'll need. 36 millimeter for the axle nut. Woo, just dropped something. We got a 22 millimeter for the tie rod end. You don't need the 22 mil. You don't have to take the tie rod end off, but I like to. Makes it easier. 19 millimeter brake caliper. 18 millimeter mounting bracket. Little side snips to help get that cotter key out. You don't need the 10 millimeter. We used it on the other side for this little nut. You could just unclip the wiring. I like to take the bolt out if it's not all rusty. 18 millimeter upper ball joint. You don't need an air chisel, but it helps. 24 millimeter lower ball joint. Big hammer, little screwdriver for the clips. Big screwdriver for helping press back the caliper. Little bar to help with that 18 millimeter getting the upper ball joint off. And besides that, you need a ball joint press. You can rent those at your auto parts stores for free. Put a deposit down, get your money back when you return it. Let's get down to business. All right, here we are. We're looking at the front passenger side. From the back, you got our caliper. We turned our wheel all the way to the left. And first thing we want to do is take our brakes off. So we got the 19 millimeter right here. Other thing I didn't show, impact gun. It's gonna help you out. You can use your impact gun to take these out, but don't use it to put them back in. You can snap them. Yeah, it depends on how strong your impact is. All right, there's our 19 mil. Now we got our 18 mil on the brake caliper mounting bracket. Come on, sucker. There we go. Let's grab our big screwdriver. We're gonna get in a spot that's not gonna hurt the rotor or the pads because these are looking pretty good. And we're gonna compress that caliper a little bit. There we go. Get it out of the way. Don't let it hang by the brake hose. That's not good for the brake hose. Unless you're planning on replacing that anyways. All right, a couple 18 millimeters. Boom. We've got our mounting bracket off. And the rotor's just gonna fall right off for us. That's awesome. If you have to beat your rotor off, use a hammer and hit right here, non-friction surface. Start hitting it, give it some good whack side to side on that friction surface, it'll come off. All right, let's move everything for a front view. Because this is where you're gonna get a better view of everything. Right there. All right, while we're at it, we'll grab our 36 millimeter socket. I forgot, it was 7/8 or 22 millimeter on the lug nuts. All right, on your axle nut, you're gonna have a torque spec when you put everything back together. When we get around to that point, I'll look it up and tell you guys what the torque spec is. And this is where the air chisel comes in handy. You got a little divot here in the front of the CV axle. This one, we don't need to use the air chisel on. Some of them, they seize into the hub. You put an air chisel in that point, press it back, brr. Helps if it's straight. Sometimes you need heat. That's rare occasion. All right, time for our upper ball joint. I'm gonna loosen that up first before I go any further. And that's gonna be left. It's gonna pull it that way. We wanna turn the wheel. We're gonna grab this tie rod in. Yeah, there we go. Now the threads on this ball joint, you wanna make sure they're nice and clean. This one is, surprisingly. If they're not clean, you're gonna have too much resistance and it's gonna spin the stud instead of the nut. Once you break it free, a ratcheting wrench is super helpful. This one, not on there that tight. take a wire brush and some PB Blaster to that nut if you have to. So I use that bar to get that extra torque to loosen the nut. All I have right now is a stubby 18. That doesn't really give me a lot of torque to get these nuts off. And sometimes these upper ball joints can be tricky to put back on. When we get to that, I'll show you a couple tricks. Almost off of there. Stud's not spinning. Stud's not spinning on this one. So that's good news. I thought about making this video like short and sweet, but I think it's more helpful to show everything and talk about whatever tips and tricks I can along the way. Our nut's off. That's perfect. Now we got that 24 millimeter on the bottom. You don't need a deep well. You can get enough on it without a deep well, depending on the ball joint. Now, we're not going to take this all the way off. Ooh. This one's got a different stud than the other side. Nope. I grabbed my 22 instead of my 24. Pop that 24 on there. Take the nut all the way off and then put it back on a couple threads. This tie rod's been replaced or hasn't been replaced, one or the other. It's got a different nut on it. No castle nut, no cotter key to take out. Sometimes you have a cotter key, a little pin to take out. Sometimes you destroy them, taking them out. And that should be a 22. So we're going to go ahead and zip that off. And this one's a little different from the other side. We might need a deep well. Yeah, we got to grab a deep well 22. Or we got this 7/8 right here. 7/8 will work too. That'll work. There we go, nuts off. And this is where our big hammer comes in handy. What you're going to do is hit on the steering knuckle, not the tie rod side. And that'll loosen it right up, the vibrations. Test our tie rod for some play. I don't feel any up and down or side to side. So that's good. All right, now we need our wheel speed sensor wiring harness out of the way. So we grab our little screwdriver and our 10 mil. 10 mil up top, this bracket's coming off. It's nice to take these bolts out every once in a while so the threads clean up, because here in Michigan, if they haven't been taken off for a while, they just snap off when they do actually need to come off. So that's a little preventative maintenance right there. All right, so that's off. We take our little screwdriver and open up the clip on the wheel speed sensor on the top of the control arm. There we go, got that off. And this caliper wants to fall down on me. Stay up there, little buddy. All right, and we've got where it clips into the wiring harness right up here. We'll pop that out, little Christmas tree. Press down on the tab. And it's supposed to come off. Sometimes you gotta take your little screwdriver, stick it in there and help it out a little. There we go. Wiring harness disconnected. See, there's a little tab on the other end you gotta press down on. Clickaroo. All right. Now we can pop that upper ball joint off. Want to hang this caliper up somewhere. Use a bungee cord or something if you have to. I'll probably just hold it. Why not? I'm gonna hammer it from this side. Looks like I can get a better hammer blow, just like the tie rod. Hold on to this with one hand. There we go. Couple of hammer blows. And the ball joint's out. And we'll put that caliper back up there. Now to break free the lower ball joint. We got that nut on there, so our steering knuckle's not gonna fall down on us. Don't let this CV axle decompress all the way. Like if you pull it out like I just did, without pressing in on the center, then it can come out of its groove right here by the inner boot. Don't do that. It's annoying when those pop out. And you gotta like turn it and move it and shake it and try to get the 3 bearings to sit into the tulip right. Now, all right, hammer time. Lower ball joint on the steering knuckle. Give it some vibration. All right, this one's a little not coming off as easy as all the other joints on the vehicle. There it goes. It just fell down. Now we lift up, take our nut off. Oh, our stud's spinning. That's not good. There we go. All right. It's a little heavy doing it by yourself. Press on that axle shaft and lower. Now we got that off. We're gonna take our axle shaft, our CV shaft, put it around the sway bar so that we got room. And I'll show you what we got. Right here, these little notches, they're more prevalent on the other side. Maybe the other side's been changed before, but it still had play. You get what you pay for on ball joints. Other side had a little bit of play, this side had a lot. So don't use cheap ball joints if you plan on keeping the vehicle. They'll go out fast. Get what you pay for on ball joints every time. These little tabs, they were more prevalent on the other side. You gotta hammer them in. Or use your air chisel. Because these tabs stick out and catch on the steel control arm. When you're ordering your ball joints, there'll be an option, aluminum or steel. Make sure you know that before you go to the parts store. There we go. That's good. All right, so we're gonna grab our air chisel with a flat bit and go around that ball joint. Hit all those spots that are overhanging. Air chisel's only like 15, 20 bucks. Pretty cheap tool, pretty useful. Except for this one is starting to malfunction. She's an old one, old girl. Get this tab over here. Then I'll get her done. Sometimes you don't have to press them out. You just get them with a good hammer blow. I don't think this one's gonna free with the hammer blow. It could. A little heat in a hammer blow, definitely. So we're gonna put our ball joint press on it. Always lubricate the threads on your ball joint press. We're gonna use this cone on the top, because the top is a cone, not flat. So if we press straight down with the tool, it's gonna roll off. And we got this cone, it's opened up. So that'll go like so. Put our tool on and get it almost snug. My ball joint press has a 22 millimeter at the top of it. Alright, got to make sure the stud of the ball joint goes through the middle of the cone and the press. See, we're a little lopsided. That's okay. We want to be straight when pressing the ball joint in, but pressing it out, we just want to get it out. There we go. I'll show you the setup. So it looks like for pressing it out. See, it's going to press down and pop. Here we go. We'll grab our impact. Make our life easy. And it looks like this stuff's in our way a little bit. That's okay. There we go. That's as far as we could press down, because this was about to start hitting the control arm. You can see we got a gap going, big gap in the ball joint. It's coming out. Ooh, come on, camera. Don't fall on me. All right, I can't let this camera fall. Straighten it out a little bit here. There we go. We'll just take our socket to get it the rest of the way. There we go, ball joint's out. Beautiful. All right, time to scoop up the new ball joint and get her pressed in. Make sure this is nice and clean and not all rusted out. This one looks nice and shiny inside. No gouges, rust. Make sure you take care of that if where the new ball joint's going is dirty. Clean her up. All right, let's get that new ball joint going. All right, we got our ball joint press all set up, and I'll show you the cones that I used. So we are gonna press this in, and when you're pressing it in, the important thing is make sure it's going in straight. There is a grease zert fitting on the top of here that goes on here. I'll show you what position to put that in. See, that didn't work. We got a little bit of an angle on this control arm. It might take you a try or two to get her lined up, and that happens. It does look like it's going in fairly straight though. Let's reset it up. All right. We need a different cone. This cone. All right, so make sure your ball joint stud is going through there. Straighten it up, because you don't want to smash anything on that ball joint. Oh, I had the wrong cone on there. Got a little ahead of myself. Let's get her nice and straight. Tighten her down by hand. Make sure your stud's going through, not catching any threads, hurting those. And let's try it again. All right, we bottomed out. That's good. Now take your thumbnail, put it in between the control arm and the ball joint. Make sure your thumbnail can't go in. It's good all the way around. Here's the setup I had. This cone's a little damaged, but it works. It sits in here. And then I had my press cone with a small extender so that it clears the top of the ball joint that comes around here. Our grease fitting is pointed forward at an angle, so we can get a grease gun to it. You want it pointed this way or this way. That way you can get grease on it. And then we're gonna put our Zerk fitting, or grease fitting, right in there. All right, we got our grease fitting in and our axle put back in place. Pushed it back around that sway bar link. We're gonna fit our steering knuckle in. I believe we need to go under the ball joint first. Ooh, I lost it. It's a little awkward. It's heavy, tough to do by yourself. Try to get this CV axle to line up center in the splines. There we go. We got it up a bit. With my other hand, I'm gonna start the ball joint nut. Go, got her started. All right, CV axle is through where it should be. Line up that top ball joint. Just get it lined up. Always use a new axle nut whenever you've taken one off. We'll put our washer on, put our nut in. Let's get that upper ball joint started. I gotta find, that was an 18 mil. Where's the nut? I think it's right here. Where's that 18 mil wrench? I don't know, it's around here somewhere. We're gonna press down on the upper control arm to feed it through the knuckle and get that nut started on there. Now we're gonna tighten down our upper and lower ball joint nut. This axle nut, we'll tighten it. We won't tighten it down, just get it snug. Final torque, the last thing we'll do is final torque on that nut. All right, we got our upper and lower ball joints torqued down. Axle nut snug for 2000 all the way to 2014, 177 foot-pounds on this axle nut. After you get everything put back together, you can have somebody hold the brakes to keep the wheel from spinning, or you can set it on the ground and torque that with a torque wrench. So those two are tight. Greased up the grease cert here. You turn your wheel all the way to the right, you can get right on that grease cert. Put our wiring harness back in. We had that 10 millimeter bolt there on that bracket. Clip that back in, clip that back in. And when you're putting your brake caliper on, we already got the mounting bracket tightened down. There's these little bolts. They might spin on you on the inside, the slides. Make sure these are nice and free moving in and out and have grease in them. These sliders, they pull out of here. All right, and we'll put the brake caliper back on. Press these in. Boom, line them up. Tighten them down by hand, not with the impact on these. Don't want to snap them. If your ball joint it just keeps spinning like it did for me, we put a wrench on the ball joint. See, this ball joint has like a locking nut, so it gets stiff at the end and started spinning the ball joint, so the nut wasn't tightening. So we put a wrench on there, and there's a slot for an Allen up underneath here. Where's that Allen? There it is. So what you can do is hold the ball joint stud in place while you tighten the nut with your wrench. or vice versa. Same story with the tie rod. It wanted to keep spinning, but this has a 10 millimeter socket that goes on it. So you can do that there. So we're gonna tighten down these two caliper bolts. Everything's put back together tight. So these two bolts in, put the tire back on with the center cap right here out so that you can put that 36 millimeter on that axle nut. Before you take off, make sure you press your brake pedal a bunch of times, prime them, because we did decompress the caliper. So don't be taking off without hitting your brake pedal a good 5-10 times, squeezing them together. Make sure you get that torque down to 177 foot-pounds. If you got any grease on your rotor, spray it off with brake cleaner. And that should about do it. Thanks for watching.